Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here for our final panel. Several years ago, we tried to look for a way to always incorporate some of our members, particularly our member managers, into the annual meeting program. And these gentlemen up here drew the short straw this year. No, thank you, gentlemen, for participating. What we wanted to do was have a representation of the Basin membership, the diverse Basin membership that we have. And so we invited these gentlemen up here as they represent different systems, different classes or types of members in the Basin family, and to talk a little bit about how they serve their members and how that relationship with Basin helps them to do that. On my left, immediately to my left, is Tom Boyko. Tom is the general manager and CEO for East River Electric out of Madison, South Dakota. They serve their members in eastern South Dakota and western Minnesota. They've got a diverse transmission and substation system that they, in load management, amongst other things, that they operate to serve their membership. Next to Tom is Doug Hardy. Doug is the general manager for Central Montana G&T out of Great Falls, Montana. And if you've been to Montana, you know the geography there is just slightly different than in South Dakota. And Doug, too, they're a Class A member of Basin Electric, and he's going to talk about how they work to serve their membership in the Central Montana family. Next to Doug is Lyle Korver. Lyle is a distribution manager for Northwest REC in Orange City, Iowa. Lyle represents a Class C member of Basin Electric, and for those in the audience that don't know, a Class C member, of course, is a member by distinction, but gets their power indirectly from Basin Electric. And so they work with their regional G&T, Northwest Iowa Power Cooperative, or better known as NIPCO. NIPCO is the Class A, and Lyle's cooperative gets their power from them. And last on the end down there is Travis Kupper. Travis is a manager or co-manager. He has a partner. I guess we better mention Don Franklin. But Don and Travis together work, and they manage 4 different distribution cooperatives. The unique thing about their arrangement is the co-ops on the western part, and these are in North Dakota, are Rough Rider Electric and Slope Electric. And just for distinction, Rough Rider would serve the coal mine area around Beulah Hazen where the power plants are. They serve Rough Rider Electric and Slope, and those 2 cooperatives are Class C members, as they're part of the Upper Missouri Class A membership family. The 2 cooperatives on the east side of their system are Morgrand Sioux and Chem Electric. They straddle the Missouri River, and those 2 cooperatives buy their power directly from Basin Electric. So they are distribution cooperatives, but they are Class A members. There are 8 such members in the Basin Electric family. And so there we have a diverse set of systems and managers to talk about those systems and how they work to serve their members. And so I'll turn to Tom first. And Tom, can you elaborate a little bit more about East River and how you serve your membership, and then how that relationship with Basin helps you to do that?
Okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, Tom Boyko with East River. We have 24 co-op members, 1 municipal member in eastern South Dakota and western Minnesota. We're about a 720 megawatt peak load, and we provide the transmission system, a little over 3,000 miles, about 270 substations, and that's our main focus, which we're in the process of rebuilding right now. We also have a load management program. We load manage about 75,000 pieces of equipment, so we have a little over 80% load factor, so it works very, very well. Right now we have load growth across our system. Large loads make up about 27% of our system. A lot of dairies, a sugar beet plant, a lot of ethanol plants, pipelines, and so that's went very, very well. And then we have residential growth across the system, and it's nice it's across the system, but then you look in the Sioux Falls area, Southeastern and Sioux Valley are averaging about 2,000 new members a year just in that Sioux Falls area. So we're able to do that. We're able to meet that growth. We have a lot of new loads coming in. A lot of companies want to come to South Dakota, and we're able to do that because we can rely on Basin. We know Basin's there with the power and the transmission, and we appreciate that. We can focus on the other things that we need to do to provide power to our members.
Thanks, Tom. And I guess I would offer the same question to Doug. Again, talk a little bit about your organization. I know you have just a couple less employees than Tom to serve your members' needs, and talk about how you do that and how that relationship with Basin helps you.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, Central Montana is a little different than some of the others, and a lot of that reason is because of, well, let me tell you, a unique aspect. If you look at our system, if I drive from the headquarters of each of our members, 8 members, 100% of 7 of them, we supply a partial to the 8th. It's a 1,000-mile loop from my office to go to each member's headquarters and back. If you take the 4 across the High Line that frankly are primarily, well, one pipeline and a lot of farm residential load up there, those 4 members serve a geographic area that is larger than the combined geographic area of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Delaware, New Jersey, and Massachusetts. Yet they serve only 8,000 members. Brings a whole different set of challenges and the distances between. Down where we're near the mountains, we have a little growth, and there's one of our members that has a little suburban growth out of one of the largest town or city. To us, it's a city in Montana. You know, our relationship with Basin is a little unique because we had like 2 halves of our system. We had WAPA half and the Montana Power half. And we had Basin from years and years ago for all the supplemental to the WAPA delivery points. And later in our life, we canceled our contract with Montana Power and went out for a search. I'll tell you a little bit more in one of the later questions of some of the things that came out of that search. But as we look at the power lines our distributions have, if you put all their power lines together, they would be long enough to reach 3/4 of the way around the world at the equator, yet very little load to deal with. So that's kind of the challenges that go up. If we didn't have an entity like Basin, I don't know how we would keep things affordable. Being able to have that support, whether it's a PERPA contact, whether it's a need for another delivery point that we work with, you name it. We stood shoulder to shoulder fighting an investor-owned rate case last year and spent a lot of time with the Basin staff at FERC, and it's doing it together in a resource that we wouldn't have just with our large geographic but small otherwise size.
Thank you, Doug. And again, you're highlighting the challenges that your members have, particularly in the vast, large geographic area, the low density. There's a lot of challenges on the distribution side of our business, and which moves us over to Lyle as a distribution manager. Why don't you talk a little bit about that, Lyle? Some of the things you're facing, how you serve your members, and again, maybe touch on a little bit that relationship with Basin Electric through NIPCO.
Yeah, Lyle Korver, Northwest REC. We're in Western Iowa. We're a member, one of 7 members of NIPCO. NIPCO's headquarters in Lamars. We are a consolidated system. We have what at one time were 4 individual RECs through 2 consolidations back in the 1990s that formed Northwest REC. So it's been 25 years since our last one, I guess. We're a growing system. We have a very good agricultural area and a very good service area. Diversified load, that's one of the strengths of our cooperative. We have a lot of, in addition to grain farming, we have hogs, dairy, poultry, ethanol, 4 ethanol plants, seeing some increased housing, some manufacturing that we've seen through economic development. So we're very fortunate to have a lot of diversity. We have a high usage per residential meter, about 2,400 kilowatt hours per month, so pretty high usage. Our density is not real high. We're only at 2.7. We have a number of 3,000 plus head dairies in our service area that have, over the last, I'd say 15 years, some of those have relocated from the West Coast that have come to Iowa. Some were smaller dairies that expanded. Quite a few of those are in the process of installing digesters. The first one will be coming online in February, so that'll be something new to us. We don't know what that load is going to be, but we think it's going to be a pretty good load. I think we have about 6 of our dairies that are in the process of working on digester projects. Our 4 ethanol plants, 3 out of the 4 are looking at carbon capture. and so we should see some expanded load if that materializes in the next 3 or 4 years from that. One of our service areas is Lamar's, Iowa. That's the home of, for you ice cream lovers, the Wells Blue Bunny Corporate Center. We serve that facility. Lamar's is considered the ice cream capital of the world, and we have a lot of spin-off of that with trucking and cold storage and plastics and a number of things like that. Relationship to Basin goes back a long time. One of our current directors, Tom Wagner, serves on the Basin board. His dad was a Basin director back in the late 80s, early 1990s. Actually served as president of the board, so that's good. We're a growing system. I've mentioned our service area. We saw pretty dramatic growth in the decade of 2000 to 2010 when we were growing more than 10% per year. We grew about 150%. And one of the great things was we didn't have to worry about having adequate power to meet our members' needs. We knew that Basin would be there for us, and they've been able to provide that for us. So long relationship with Basin, and we just, when we don't have to worry about the lights staying on because of not having generation, we can concentrate on the things that we do to serve our members, and so we really appreciate having that peace of mind that Basin's going to have the generation that we need.
Thanks, Lyle. You mentioned a lot of different things about your cooperative. You mentioned, the density piece. You said what, 2.4, 2.6?
0.7.
2.7 meters per mile line. And, it always makes us right at a competitive disadvantage with our IOU neighbors. They're 20, 30 meters per mile of line, or the municipalities. Travis, I know at least one of your co-ops is right about 1 or slightly less than 1 meter per mile line. You've got some rural co-ops, and we'll talk a little bit about your system and how you guys serve those members out there.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'll touch on that. Good afternoon, Travis Kupper with Innovative Energy Alliance. As Chris mentioned, work with 4 different distribution cooperatives, a little bit of a unique situation there, as 2 of them, Slope and Rough Rider, are covered as a Class C member through Upper Missouri. Then there's Morgan Sioux Electric and Chem Electric, who are direct purchasers as Class A members of Basin. Just speaking on line density, there are two of those cooperatives are in the bottom 10%, not the bottom 10%, but the bottom 10 for line density of all cooperatives in the U.S. at about 1.22, about 1.25. So fairly light. Lyle, you're saying you're fairly light at 2.7. I'd love to say that we're there, but we're not. But it definitely gives us some challenges. Continuing to provide service to our members who are so sparsely populated. We're not unique in the respect of our system as far as transmission and distribution, but we do provide both. We have a little over 800 miles of transmission line collectively throughout our system. So we do work on that and don't always do the maintenance on it, but we have to make sure that maintenance is done and have utilized Basin for some assistance with either their engineering staff and just giving us the different contractors that we can talk to in order to ensure that gets done as well. So Basin has been a long partner that we have worked with. More recently, one of our members is serving a large pump site, and it's that pump site's looking to expand, and we're going to be needing to provide additional power. We're going to need a delivery for that. Been working with Basin over the last 6-8 months now on how we're going to be able to accomplish that in the most economical manner possible, not only for our member, but also for our existing cooperative members, and also make it fair with Basin as well. So very valued partner that we will continue to look for in times of assistance like that, and going forward in the future.
Thanks, Travis. Throughout the day and even throughout the year, we get a lot of questions from members about reliability. And we referenced our survey that we did with you, the Basin membership here, about a year and a half ago, and reliability and stable rates were the top 2 issues that kept coming across from boardroom after boardroom with manager groups and so forth. You've all talked about you've got different memberships out there, And we heard today from Rich Colgard where he talked again about the economy. The world is going to become more dependent on electricity, not less. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about what that means to your members when you think about stability and reliability of power? And how are those expectations of your members changed over the years, Tom?
Yeah, it's an interesting question because, first, congratulations on the meeting. I think from the start to now, it's really highlighted the point that we are Basin. That's why we've got together, put Basin together as members, because we needed that reliable power supply and that has stable rates, and that we were looking at the long term. When you look at even today, if we had to go and do this ourselves, we'd be talking to Doug and the rest of the co-ops and saying, let's work together to try to make this happen. That's what we're seeing. So when you talk reliability, when you look at ethanol plants, if they don't have reliable power, they lose a batch of ethanol, it costs them millions of dollars. If you're trying to provide power to computer-oriented businesses, they can't have any of the glitches, or it's going to cost them major dollars. And then when you look at what happened through that weather event, we appreciate what Basin did through that. It was a tremendous accomplishment, what we came through, and we made it through without affecting our rates. So a huge accomplishment throughout that whole event. So again, we can do our business, we can do our local business, provide our services to our members, because we know Basin's doing what they need to do to provide that reliable, stable power supply. So we do appreciate that.
Doug, how about you? How about expectations of membership in your area?
The expectations are absolute reliability. It's ironic, if you go back in the 80s, we did an end-use study, and we had 3 or 4 questions we designed into it, and it went to everybody in Montana. And the west side of the state has high density, lowest rates, cheap Bonneville power at the time. They had it made, and they were very, very reliable. Cheap rates, reliable. The east side had a lot more storms, more like Dakota-wise, and reliability was a little bit lower. Rates were a lot higher because we didn't have as cheap a source of power as what Bonneville provided at the time. And the answers came back across every co-op that had really low rates and high reliability, that the members would sacrifice reliability for a lower rate. On the whole east side, where they were paying more already, they were willing to pay more for higher reliability. So that goes back to reliability. Wrapping back to your question as far as the stability aspect of it, when I look at where things are today, it wraps back to where I said I'd come back to that when we're looking at different power sources. One of the power sources that we looked at when we canceled contracts with Northwestern, part of us just wanted to come to Basin. We had the relationship, we're already members of Basin. Other parts wanted to see everything out in the world that we could, where we had a good due diligence. What are our options? And Enron was one of those. And in 95 or so, man, they're coming in and they're getting power so cheap, and we kept saying, how can they do that? They don't have any generation particularly. One of the large co-ops in Montana canceled their contract with BPA and went to Louisiana Gas and Pacific, who wanted to be a big marketer. I think I have it as Louisiana. I think I have gas, probably not the Pacific part of it. But as we looked at that, our whole state legislature went to deregulation because the large industrials wanted to get that cheap power, because we're in that valley in market cost, and they wanted to go to that cheap power. And a couple years later, then here we are in the legislature threatening people that own generation not being Basin, that if they didn't give lower cost power way below market to people in Montana, they'd have a 2,000% property tax increase. I mean, I've seen that so many times. I've had our large industrial that we worked in that same time frame with our contracts, and I was frightened. If we went out and there was some good options we looked at of laddering blocks of power and stuff like that, if we'd have done that and that mine would have shut down, we'd have been bankrupt like that, because those are take or pay type contracts. That was the appeal of going to like a Basin, to where if it shuts down over here, something else is happening over here. That ability to move over such a geographic footprint is protection and stability from my perspective, and it's incredibly important. So the deja vu aspect is, I mentioned the one valley where people were wanting to be at market. Just fast forward into 2000 something, I can't remember when it was after 2010, the same people we're supplying power to have a mine that's supplied by market, they're at market, bilateral trade to serve it. They were begging us to be able to do the supply from Basin. And 4 years later, Basin bumped up a little bit, and it didn't sound as appealing at that window of time. As they said, well, our rate is so high, and I said, yeah, but look at where we're going. If we have to make a transition, and this society is going to make a transition, how can we better make a transition than a body of like-minded people the size of Basin footprint, and give us some time that we'll work through, and we'll find the best cost and reliability we can for you. But that member said, okay, they got it. So if I didn't answer your question, I hope you appreciate my rant.
Very much so. There'll be time for questions later, so if you have questions for Doug. But you talk about, again, there's that, again, weaving that story, that reliability has mattered in the past and it matters today. One of the things, Lyle, let me tee this up for you. You've seen earlier, everyone, where Basin, the membership's load in the Basin family has grown substantially, particularly in the last 20 years. We've doubled. And we talked about how we served those with different generation resources, certainly leading on the markets, joining SPP and being part of MISO, expanding coal, certainly with Dry Fork in 2011 to 2012 timeframe, all the gas and renewables that we've also brought into the fleet. But it doesn't work unless the distribution side and the transmission side is also growing and expanding. And so there was I think it was in Todd's presentation yesterday, where we talked about, we had coal bed methane growth in the Basin family just in the last 20 years. We had an enormous expansion in the ethanol side of things, and how that reverberated through the ag economy with irrigation and grain drying and other things. We certainly had the oil and gas expansion in the Bakken, and then we had growth around some of our cities and communities. All of that was made possible by the investment and the commitment by the local co-ops. There was a lot of engineering done, a lot of capital invested, not just on the G&T side and on the transmission side, but at the local level to make this all happen. I've made the comment, we've got infrastructure out there in places where the coyotes don't even go, and it's good. And we can serve all kinds of load. And so talk a little bit about that expansion. I'll have the same question for Travis about some of the things you guys have done and that commitment by your board of directors to go out there and expand that cooperative.
Well, I think that brings us to one of the, special things about our cooperative model, and particularly in the Basin system, is our three-tiered power supply network that we have. Basin takes care of the generation, some transmission. NIPCO handles the transmission. They own our substations also. We're at the distribution level. We all play a key piece, and we all have to make that investment. If Basin has wonderful generation resources, but our system is falling down, or NIPCO isn't rebuilding their system, we still aren't going to have the reliable power that we want. And it's also the power quality. We're finding, 20 years ago we were 95% farm residential, 5% commercial industrial. Today we're, 56% of our sales is commercial industrial. And it's ethanol plants, we've got a 4 million bird egg laying facility. We're going to be serving an all-electric school. We have people working from home. We have housing developments. They have different expectations than what our members did 20 years ago. If somebody's working from home and they're on a Zoom call and they lose power, they're not very happy with us. Same thing with a dairy or an egg laying facility that has all this digital equipment and they're seeing power quality issues or interruptions. We're not very popular with them. And so it takes all of us making those investments and having that commitment to do that. And I think, again, that's one of the neat things about our model, is that we can all do that, and I think we do a remarkable job of that within the Basin system, of holding our end up, but working together. We can't do it on our own, Basin can't do it on their own, NIPCO can't. We have to work together, plan together, and I think it's really worked well.
Travis, how about you? I know your co-ops have invested a lot of capital. Looking at the short term, looking at the long term, how do you best do that? Reconfiguring rates, looking at aid to construction policies to help fund that, working with RUS, CoBank, CFC. Talk to a little bit about that expansion and how you're able to serve those loads.
If you look at on the west side of our area, we do serve some enhanced oil recovery in the southwest corner, but if you get into the northern portion of Rough Rider, that's the very southern tip of the Bakken. So we weren't completely inundated as some of our neighbors to the north were, but we did see substantial growth in that area. And that did take a lot of investment on our part. Took working with some of those new members on an aid to construction policy. How can we best serve them and still continue to not only protect the cooperative, but to protect the members that have been there for a good number of years and have already spent the money and invested in the system. There were some challenges we had at that point in time. We did have to build some additional 115 transmission line, as that's part of our system as well. Part of that was done in working with Basin to not to place the line, but they shared with us their line design, their pole structure requirements, so that we could build a system that we knew met the needs of the area, was built for this area, and if it came down to it, because we are matching what the Basin system is, we could contract with them in order to do hotline work or hotline maintenance if it did come down to that. Definitely an advantage for us since we're not able to, in all cases, build the two-way system in to serve some of these larger loads. That's the ultimate goal. We're still working toward that goal, but the reliability that we are getting is something that Basin has invested the time and money in already. We're benefiting in that way as well.
Chris, if I could mention also something else we've done on the distribution side is our AMI system. We're on our second generation, but being able to, right now, we know sooner than the member calls us that there's an outage because it's reported back to us. We have a two-way system now, and it's, making those kinds of investments in technology so we can serve our members more efficiently and to meet their expectations, their growing expectations, just things that we have to make investments in at this time.
I was asked a question here a couple years ago. I was sitting on a panel similar to this, and the question wanted me to comment on the lack of sophistication in the electric grid. And it was rather interesting, and there was some folks from NISC in the audience, and they were sitting at a table up front, and I said, I can't speak for all utilities across the country, but what do you know about electric cooperatives? There has been a tremendous amount of effort and investment put in by our members. They have a very sophisticated grid, and they continue to advance that sophistication. Again, and I just bring that up because that's all part of the model of how we do this together. So we talked about serving our members. We've talked about a lot of the infrastructure that's required, and I'm so proud of how the co-ops work together to do that. Some of the things that have come up, we see a lot and we talk about member expectations. Let's speak a little bit, taken away from central station generation, which we do very well, and we've talked about how Basin does that. What are some of the thoughts and expectations? I'll go back to Tom again. When we talk about distributed generation and how to incorporate that into serving your members.
Yeah, we're seeing more and more requests for some distributed generation out of, especially the large loads. The more residential, they kind of can take care of themselves. But the large loads, you see different things. And we have one where they're using a waste steam pressure. It's on an ethanol plant, and they're able to offset some of their load. We're able to work with Basin and get a standby rate in place that protects the rest of the members so you're not having cost shifts across the membership. So that worked well, but now we're seeing a lot more requests to put in renewables at the site. We have data processors. They want solar farms right on their site. So one for the advertising purpose so that people can see that they're green, but they do want to offset their carbon footprint too. We're seeing that more and more with the ethanol plant. So I think it's something we have to take serious. We have to try to adjust our rates and our our interconnection requirements, make sure we can let that happen without, again, causing cost shifts, either within the membership of East River or the co-op or across Basin. That whole issue is not going to go away. And we're going to start, as you see more and more panels out there, you're going to start seeing it get pushed down more and more to the residential side, and there are going to be more and more requests to do something like that. So definitely seeing that out there.
Thanks, Tom. Doug, how about you? What are your members asking about?
Oh, we have, the members, we have members that have been there for generations and part of the system. You have people that are coming to the mountains in Montana and other parts. So there's quite a little bit of diversity from co-op to co-op and on the desire to have renewables. I think all my members offer RECs as an option to them. But for the people that want the on-site, a few years ago I thought, if we can bring on solar, sub 3-cent solar, and it costs 10 cents on a rooftop, well, that's going to be a while. Then I see in the reconciliation, one of their concepts is let's just pump billions of dollars into paying people to put solar in the rooftop. So as I think that through my head, I think in terms of, okay, what's our future in that as we become more of a capacity deliverer, a supplier, maybe when batteries aren't available. I don't know, I think more renewable would come in before the backup with them. But still, it's not going to take them through days of low generation that would never be cost effective for them, or unless we became so expensive it made it cost effective. So I sit there and say, what should we be doing now, or I think what should we be doing now that would prep us for if we're delivering less energy and more capacity? Because what we're seeing is when people have renewable on in general that have put net metering on, their usage goes up because they think, well, I got to use all that product now. To where when the renewable is not on and it's drawing all off the grid, it actually could increase. And one thing we know is when we peak when it's dark, and morning and afternoon summer, peak when it's way past the prime of solar, it's not changing, it's not contributing to peak. So if I wrap back to another question that I kind of skirted of what can we be working together on from a family perspective, if we as a society cannot understand that when the California PUC says we put on a jillion gigawatts of renewable capacity, and they're accurately stating that was a nameplate of it. If we can't get people to understand capacity in two different things, what it's capable of, what can we rely on, the dispatchable renewable, and realize it's not going to be cheap for dispatchable renewable compared to what all blended in. So that's, I apologize for probably a longer answer than I needed to, but how we work together and get the strategies to where people understand how much of the grid's purpose is for when their renewable isn't there, and how we have to have generation source to meet that and understand that rather than thinking that they have capacity. Because I think a lot of the lay people I talk to really do believe, well, I can be 100% renewable if we just put in enough solar.
Yeah, they want the renewable, but they don't want the intermittent output. That's interesting.
So there's a piece here, there's a component about education. And connecting with those members, and I guess I'll look to our two distribution managers. Again, what are some of the expectations you have you're hearing from your retail members, end-use consumers, regarding renewables? But then what kind of efforts have you had to undertake to help communicate, to help them understand this is how the technology works? This is the physics of electricity.
Yeah, we're seeing an increasing number of calls coming in about renewables, in particular solar. There's a few aggressive vendors in our area. We did a solar demonstration project at our headquarters facility 7 years ago to try to learn more about solar, and we've used that to try to educate our members. Like Doug said, it's not generating on our peak 7 months out of the year. We're peaking at 7:30 in the morning. There's no solar generation that's contributing to that. So we've tried to use that to help educate them. But we're also seeing DG interest in some of our larger loads too. And I'd like to give just a couple quick examples, if I could, of programs that Basin has, or the way Basin has worked with us on that. First one is one of our ethanol plants. They decided they wanted to lower their carbon intensity number here. within the last year or two, and they were going to install a steam letdown turbine, about a megawatt load. They're a 5 megawatt system. We thought we were probably going to lose that megawatt of load, have to apply the standby rate. That led to they were also going to put in a 15 megawatt cogen unit, so have 16 megawatts of generation, 5 megawatts of load. Anyway, working with Basin was very responsive, very innovative. The NIPCO team was awesome. We were able to work out what I think is a win-win-win scenario. We call it a buy all, sell all. So we are keeping the load. Basin is purchasing the output and marketing that into the SPP network. The member is accomplishing what they wanted as far as lowering their CI number. So that's, I think, a great example of ways that we are going to need to get innovative and creative and try to solve a solution. We had another pork processing facility that got purchased by a company out east that really wanted to do something in the area of renewables. They first were looking at maybe they would invest in some renewables physically, and then we started talking about the Prairie Winds program, and they ended up deciding to just do that. They subscribed to 100% of their energy, 10 million kilowatt hours a year, 2 mills participation in the Prairie Winds program. For only $20,000, they could go out and promote that they were buying 100% of their energy renewable. Very low investment for them. They didn't have to invest in a multi-million-dollar renewable project, and they're happy. So I think just a couple of examples of ways that Basin has worked with us, NIPCO. We just have to be creative and innovative and work through some of those things.
And that is a great example, Alan. I know there was a lot of work put into that. And again, the key to that was not only did it help your membership, it helped you, it helped NIPCO, but we were able to do that through the co-op family, and there wasn't any cost shifts.
Correct.
And that's always key to these. And I think Tom mentioned that earlier. You know, how do we best serve our members, but we don't put an undue burden or cost onto others that are not participating in that. Travis, how about you? Things that you guys have seen regarding distributed generation, any unique challenges, and then communicated with those members that are asking?
One of the biggest challenges that we do run into is it involves the education of the member. They look at systems, they go to state fairs, they talk to different contractors, they talk to people who want to sell them a system. It's going to put out this much, it's going to reduce your power cost and your monthly bill to this much, or you'll even make money on it, is something that's quite common we hear. And at the end of the day, we spend time and have to educate that member on what the realistic expectations are, what the service life of that particular unit is, and whether it be a solar or even in some cases small wind generators, and how much maintenance you're going to have to put into that. They're not going to last forever. They're not going to run trouble free. And at the end of the day, it goes back to so much reliability. They don't want to have to be solely dependent upon it. But there are solar applications out there, and we do have some members who are getting into the small scale solar and in working with them, and it's an education process, and that education goes both ways. We learn from it as well. But in so many times those members are thinking they're going to, they're not looking at it as a get-rich-quick scheme, but they're feeling that they should be getting more output than what they're being told. So it's the education of that, but again, the reliability is so paramount to what they're doing. Everyone has really grown accustomed over the last decades that when you want the power, you turn the light on, or you turn the switch on, and there it is. And are there going to be advances in technology that we're going to see? Yeah, there are. And I think as those come about, we're going to look to not only Basin, but to the entire Basin family. We all don't need to invent the wheel. We can share amongst ourselves and share with your neighbors, share with anybody, in this group to help learn and help advance that process and do it better for everyone.
Thanks, Travis. And go ahead, Doug, please.
Yeah, if I could take 1 second to thank something that's been going on for a number of years at Basin, is on these type things, when Matt brings the issue that you've worked with them to the Class A and with working with Basin management, Tom brings an issue there. The group of Class A managers are focused, I believe, on trying to help vet things, figure out what can work, help, when I say vet things, not to compete with the board. They have the say. But the board is who I wanted to thank too, in terms of they've been open to that process, and I think it's led to good decisions, and staff is just so focused on working with us on finding solutions, with trying not to have cost shifts, but trying to not put barriers up in front of solutions. And that came to mind there when you're talking in terms of there is going to be a lot of change in the future. There's no question. That's how we make that future work for us. Thank you.
So let me touch on that a little bit. I'm going to deviate from the question I was going to ask. but you know, we have this tremendous network in you know, in the Basin family. If you've ever really thought about it, I don't know that we've counted up but there's over 1,000 directors with all their experiences and perspectives, and some are more active than others, and of course you know, it takes a lot of time away from their real jobs, if you will, other things that they're doing. But I've always been so impressed. You know, they bring that perspective into this cooperative evaluation and decision-making process, and there's a lot of collaboration, if you will. We see the same thing with the managers. Again, 131 senior executives in the membership that bring all these different perspectives and challenges in, and it's really quite a wonderful thing to see in the good and take, or the give and take, and listening and sharing. Talk to that a little bit about you mentioned again your perspective on that. I mean, I just see so much value in that. When we I don't know that we give ourselves enough credit. It's a wonderful thing that we have in this family. Go ahead.
Yeah, I absolutely am so strong in belief of the value of the expertise of the distribution managers. It's not my job to tell them this or that other than information. It's to interact, work things out, find better solutions, working together. And the thing about when you can have it work as a team, your solutions are so much better than what I as an individual or a given distribution manager as an individual. Even as they interact, as I watch them, one of the most valuable things in our managers meetings is the roundtable between the managers, and they're learning from each other. We're all learning from each other. I learn every time I come to a Basin meeting, not only from Basin staff, from my colleagues, and we can be mighty powerful when we're working together.
Any other comments on that? Again, on that, you know, I think we have a culture, we continue to work on it, a culture of collaboration, of listening, of learning, of trying to find solutions, and I see that every day.
Yeah, and you know, we talked a little bit about the geographical differences, different areas you serve, and you see that across the footprint, from right around the Twin Cities to Doug's area out there, and you have different needs. You have members that have different desires, different wants, and they want to approach things differently, like renewables. You know, some want all renewables, some don't want anything to do with it. But when you work together, you come out with a compromise, and I think where Basin's at's been great. You know, with our Western allocation and Basin's renewables, we're at 40% renewables. That's a huge accomplishment, and you know, you didn't swing either way. You came down to something that worked for everybody.
And that is, again, that's a tremendous story. Yeah, without any mandates, without anybody forcing that on us. Again, this cooperative family, at least personally I could speak to what endured me to, is that people trying to do the right thing. Even when people say it can't be done, we continue to try and do that. You know, we've got about 4 minutes left in our time, and we will maybe have a question or two if we have any, but kind of to wrap things up a little bit, and of course we'll stop for questions, but what are some of the, you know, we talked about, what do you think are some of the challenges of this cooperative family, and what are some of the opportunities? You know, we've talked about distributed generation. Are there some other things that come to mind that you'd like to share with the group? And I guess in order, I'll start with Tom again.
Yeah, first I want to thank Basin for what you accomplished through that storm. I talked about it before, but when you look at what some of the people went through, $10,000 monthly bills, some entities went bankrupt, some are going to have to spend billions of dollars to harden their system so that it doesn't happen again. We had a couple of hiccups, but we came through it. We didn't have any rate increases, And our system is basically set up to handle it going forward. That's a huge accomplishment. You can't undersell that. That's just tremendous. And yet we all have that pressure. People want to close down those big generators that really get us through that. So we're going to have to work through that. So that's a huge challenge going forward. But again, thanks for what you accomplished there.
Thanks, Tom. Doug, what do you think about challenges and opportunities?
The greatest opportunity we have is to educate not just our members, but public, and find ways to do it to where they understand the consequences of what they push for. If they push for things that are just impossible for us to do, that harm them in the future, it'd be great if we could make sure they know that before public policy gets put in place that does very harmful things to us. So our opportunity, we have one of the biggest networks. You show me any other entity that has as many people and as many voting districts in this nation as electric co-ops, and wait, you can't. There isn't. Together, apart, I know what happens to us. We're small. I know how we got big. We were formed because Montana Power was kicking each co-op's tail at the negotiating table. That's why Central formed. It's as important now that we leverage our combined strengths as it ever was, maybe even more so. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Lyle, what do you see out there?
Yeah, I think the distribution, the DG push moving in that direction, and some members wanting to have more control over their generation and just see us as maybe the battery. Others that still they don't want anything to do with that, and they want to just continue to be a full service, purchase everything from us type of thing. Us balancing, making sure we get our rates right so that the ones that want to use us just as the battery, they're paying their fair share, and the other ones aren't having to subsidize. I think that's a challenge. The EV build out, it's going to be a while, but we need to prepare for that. And I think there's some opportunities with that. If you talk about a 20 kW charger on a half-ton pickup in the garage, is there some load management opportunities with that, time of use rates and that type of thing that might benefit Basin and all of us? With that, we need to think through some of that and be well prepared, I think, for when that comes.
Thank you for mentioning that. We didn't even get into the EVs, so thank you. Yeah, that'd be a whole other topic in and of itself. Travis, what do you think about challenges and opportunities?
I have to tie it back into what Lyle just stated there, is in regards to some of the technologies we have in front of us and how we're going to continue to incorporate those into our system, making it fair for our members, keeping it safe for our employees, keeping it safe for our members, and at the end of the day, incorporating that in to give them the best possible rate, continuing to provide them the base service that they have grown accustomed to, keep that reliability up. And I think that in itself is going to be a heck of a challenge as we go into the future, but it's another opportunity for us to work together as a group, stay together as a group, and continue to provide service to those members like we've already done for so many years.
Thank you. Doug?
One thing I didn't mention as far as a perspective that I think ties into what our future is, man, when I get the luxury of coming and having Basin meetings and stuff, and interact with a lot of the staff of Basin, there's so many new faces there's so many old faces that are sharp. There are some incredibly bright, dedicated, focused on us type people in that organization, in our organization. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that, Doug. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Is there any questions for our esteemed panelists? I am not seeing any questions, and we have run down the clock. I want to thank all of our panelists. I want to thank our audience. One of the things that you're going to notice, and tonight even we're going to touch on a little bit at our banquet, and you take these opportunities, our 60th anniversary, to reflect on things. The challenges that we have, the opportunities are going to be new, but if you look at this cooperative family, having challenges, having opportunities is not new. We have all worked through them over the years, and we've come up with wonderful solutions to help serve our membership better together. So thank you. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause.